In a future not far off, strange creatures suddenly emerge, wreaking havoc and decimating humanity, plunging the world into an apocalypse with few survivors left. Various theories float around about the cause, from a viral bug to a mysterious purple haze to divine retribution, but all remain unverified rumors. Amidst this chaos, Paul scours for essentials when the town's sirens blare, prompting him to dash into the streets, dodging danger and seeking refuge from screams and explosions. Navigating through the city shrouded in smoke, Paul finds solace in an abandoned house on the outskirts, where he reunites with his children, his sole responsibility. 15 years fly by, and Paul's boys mature into sturdy teenagers. They inhabit the same dwelling, venturing out by day for provisions, but retreating into secrecy at night. As dusk falls, Joseph barricades the windows, while their loyal dog Rocco is ushered inside. Paul keeps vigil outside until he spots Thomas returning, reproaching him for tardiness. Thomas explains his delay by mentioning his assistance to the Rose family, who own a nearby farm. Once inside, they ensure every entry point is securely locked before sitting down for dinner. Paul reprimands Thomas once again, warning him that future tardiness will result in confinement within their boundaries. Joseph teases his brother, provoking a quarrel that swiftly escalates into a scuffle, halted by Paul's intervention, who urges them to act as men, not beasts. Following the meal, Paul observes his sons playing chess, interrupted by Rocco's agitated behavior towards the floor. Viewing it as an ominous sign, Paul and Thomas investigate downstairs, startled by sudden pounding at the door. Believing the creatures are attempting entry, they brace the door against the assault until the assailants relent and depart. Thomas confronts Joseph for his lack of assistance, prompting Joseph to admit he was eavesdropping to gather intelligence. 3 attempts were made. The initial lasted 10 seconds, the second endured for 20, and the final one lasted only a single second. Joseph speculates that the first was a trial, the second a genuine effort to breach, and the third a mere frustrated strike. Surveying the door the next day, they discover numerous claw marks, weakening its integrity. Paul and his sons venture out to gather wood for reinforcement, returning to the house with their findings. While Thomas splits the wood, Paul checks on Joseph, who's tinkering in the barn. After some coaxing, Joseph confesses his attempt to construct a vehicle, yearning to escape the sense of confinement and fear. Despite his struggles, Paul's modifications bring the vehicle to life. Eagerly, Paul takes the teenagers for a spin, imparting driving lessons along the way. After an hour of exploration, they return home, where Paul notes the necessity for reinforcing the windows, dispatching the boys to gather salvage from the river. Thomas protests, angered by the broken promise of visiting the farm, but Paul insists on the priority of their task. En route, tensions rise as Thomas accuses Joseph of receiving preferential treatment from Paul. Unconvinced of his need for protection, Joseph remains steadfast, prompting Thomas to exit the car near the farm, requesting a pickup later. Back at the house, Paul completes the door reinforcement before retreating for a solitary smoke by the waterfall. Amidst the serene setting, Paul spots a foreboding black crevice among the rocks. Meanwhile, Joseph secures himself to the car and ventures into an old derelict ship in search of provisions. Inside a locker, he stumbles upon a pinup from a tattered magazine, momentarily stunned. His exploration is abruptly interrupted by a swarm of insects emerging from a pile of debris, catching him off guard. The insects swarm around Joseph, their intent clear as they aim for his skin, prompting him to swiftly evacuate the area. Meanwhile, at the farm, Thomas assists with chores, though his true motive lies in his affection for Charlotte, the farmer's daughter. Their mutual crush evident, they take a stroll through the fields. Charlotte shares a childhood memory of tethering herself to a tree to expand her play area, while technically abiding by the rules. They also indulge in a game of speculating wild theories about the apocalypse. As dusk approaches, Thomas bids Charlotte farewell with a tight embrace, mindful of the fading daylight. Returning home, Paul grows anxious finding Rocco, but neither of his sons. Joseph eventually manages to start the car, heading back home. Meanwhile, Thomas, racing against time, slips and falls into a crevice. Unaware of his brother's plight, Joseph continues home, recounting the incident to Paul upon arrival. Concerned, Paul instructs Joseph to secure the premises while he sets out with Rocco to search for Thomas. In the crevice, Thomas regains consciousness with aching limbs. Using a lighter for illumination, he discovers a terrifying sight, a creature extending its claw through a fissure in the wall, emitting a spine-chilling screech. Thomas defends himself, stabbing the creature's hand, but faces another assailant. Gasping for air, Thomas is on the brink of losing consciousness when Paul arrives, swiftly dispatching the creature to rescue his son. After confirming Thomas's safety, Paul and Rocco discover a tunnel leading to the crevice. Recognizing the danger of traversing the forest at night, they opt to remain in the crevice until dawn for safety, sealing the entrance. As they prepare a flare for defense, the ground trembles, signaling the monster's subterranean movement, trapping them by burying the exit. Amidst Rocco's incessant barking and the ceaseless rumbling, Paul positions the flare in a newly formed fissure. When the creatures attempt to breach, Paul triggers a small explosion, inadvertently injuring himself. Meanwhile, Joseph, sensing danger, devises a plan. He positions himself in front of the main door, securing a rope tied to his chair, pretending to be asleep. A creature tests his ruse by extending its claw, which Joseph ignores. Seizing the opportunity, Joseph springs into action, activating a trap that ensnares the creature in a cage. Satisfied with his ingenuity, Joseph retreats to rest. The following morning, Joseph grows concerned as Paul and Thomas fail to return. Setting out in the car to search, he encounters Thomas, who has managed to clear the entrance and is rescuing their injured father. With Rocco's assistance, they reunite and journey back home as a family. The brothers rally together, transporting Paul to the car and then to his bed at home. As they deliberate their next steps, Thomas discovers the cage and inadvertently agitates the creature. Joseph quickly covers it, explaining that light harms the monsters. They tend to Paul's wounds, while Joseph reflects on the creature's altered behavior, its quicker entry and departure, signaling a troubling shift. Joseph suspects Paul's actions as the catalyst for the creature's retaliation, contradicting Thomas's theory of their intelligence and vengeance. In an attempt to prove his theory, Thomas confronts the caged creature, prompting a struggle during which the creature escapes, taking refuge under the bed. Rocco's barking prompts the creature to transform and attack, with Joseph and Thomas ultimately dispatching it. Eager for insight, Joseph dissects the creature in the barn to no avail, despite Rocco and curious insects observing. Frustrated, he considers Thomas's suggestion to seek aid from the Roses, who possess better accommodations and medical supplies. Joseph doubts their willingness to help but relents, yielding to Thomas's insistence. They load Paul into the car and drive to the farm, only to face rejection from Charlotte's parents, who lack sufficient resources to accommodate Paul's injuries, disregarding Charlotte's protests. However, despite refusing aid for Paul, Charlotte's parents agree to let Thomas stay, potentially providing more resources for Paul and Joseph at their house. Joseph abruptly departs, followed by Thomas, leading to a heated argument where Joseph blames Thomas for their father's impending demise. Enraged, Thomas shoves his brother to the ground and starts choking him, but pulls back when he realizes what he's doing. Joseph swiftly departs with their unconscious father, leaving Thomas to join the family at the farm. Later, Charlotte offers Thomas some genuine hospitality, sharing food and personal items. The moment is interrupted when they share a kiss, only for Charlotte's father to intervene and send her away. On his return, Joseph observes the panicked sheep and scattered dirt, indicating the creature's subterranean movement. Arriving home, he spots a trail of dirt near the wall, sparking concern that the monsters may be lurking beneath the house. After attending to his father, Joseph retreats to the barn, brainstorming a new strategy and fortifying the premises. While securing the windows, he inadvertently stumbles into a concealed hole beneath the carpet, realizing the creatures have infiltrated the building. Meanwhile, at the farm, Charlotte discovers Thomas rummaging through the kitchen. Worried about his father, Thomas seeks medicine and intends to depart promptly. Charlotte obliges, and as Thomas expresses gratitude with a hug, unaware of potential eavesdroppers. Rushing to leave, Thomas is halted by a farmhand brandishing a firearm, accusing him of theft. Despite Thomas's explanation that Charlotte provided the medicine, the workers detain him, leading him to the barn, where they bind him and drown out his protests with music. As one of the men prepares to execute Thomas, a sudden sinkhole forms beneath him, causing him to miss his shot as he falls into the void. As the other men rush to check on their fallen comrade, a creature springs from the hole. In the main house, Charlotte's parents awaken to a disturbance. Lighting a candle, the father investigates, only to be ambushed by a creature, igniting a struggle. The candle topples, igniting a blaze as the creature transitions its attack to the mother. She attempts to flee, but is intercepted by the creature, which unleashes a horrific assault, ultimately claiming both parents' lives. In her room, Charlotte listens in horror as her parents are slain. Emerging, she follows a trail of blood, leading her to the bathroom where she discovers the creature with her mother's lifeless body. Meanwhile, at the barn, the men battle against the relentless onslaught of creatures to no avail. One by one, they fall victim to the creature's ferocity, those who escape finding themselves pursued relentlessly as the creatures multiply. As the barn erupts in flames, Thomas seizes an opportunity to free himself, toppling the furniture he's bound to and breaking free. Just as a creature approaches, poised to strike, Charlotte intervenes, dispatching the threat with a well-aimed shot. After witnessing the inferno engulfing the house, the teens flee, with Thomas seeing the devastation and Charlotte informing him of her parents' demise. They agree to seek refuge at Thomas's home. Meanwhile, Joseph resorts to barricading the hole with furniture, hoping to delay the creature's advance. After ensuring his father's comfort, Joseph prepares for battle, but is startled when Thomas and Charlotte unexpectedly arrive. Acknowledging the need for teamwork, Joseph confides in Thomas, their discussion interrupted by Paul regaining consciousness. Paul swiftly administers the medicine, urging his sons to persevere in the fight. Joseph outlines his plan to the group, gathering gas cans from the barn while Rocco's barking serves as a warning signal. They also relocate an old freezer into the house. As Thomas and Charlotte reinforce the windows, Joseph constructs a makeshift explosive device, incorporating every flammable object he can find, including one of his father's cigarettes as a timer. Suddenly, the furniture barricade covering the hole trembles, coinciding with a creature descending the chimney into Paul's room. Another monster emerges from the hole, but Thomas swiftly neutralizes it with a stab from behind. However, the creature retaliates, prompting Thomas to retrieve his knife and deliver a fatal blow to its head. As a third creature advances towards Charlotte, she reacts swiftly, neutralizing it with a precise gunshot. Reuniting with Joseph, the trio resumes their efforts to relocate the freezer. Suddenly, they are startled as Paul emerges, bloodied from his confrontation with the chimney-dwelling monster. Taking charge, Paul seizes Charlotte's gun and fires at the creatures below, but their numbers overwhelm them as they surge towards him. Thinking fast, Paul kicks one of the creatures, causing the floor to give way under their weight, sending most of them plummeting through the collapsing structure. Despite a few remaining threats, the teens eliminate them swiftly, impressing Paul with their coordinated efforts. With the immediate danger abated, the trio, along with Rocco, retreat to the safety of the freezer. Opting not to follow them, Paul shuts the door and remains to stall the creatures, buying them some time. The group hides inside the freezer while Paul reminisces about holding his babies tightly, assuring them everything would be okay. As a fresh horde of creatures bursts in, Paul draws their attention away while the heap of furniture eventually detonates, resulting in the complete collapse and ignition of the house. As the freezer begins to roll, it continues for several minutes until coming to a stop. Emerging from the wreckage, the teens frantically search for Paul, only for a creature to suddenly emerge. They flee to the car and drive away as the monster, engulfed in flames, gives chase. Despite Charlotte's bullets proving ineffective, she manages to incapacitate the monster by striking it with her gun at close range, causing it to fall apart. After driving for a few miles, the group stops the car and gazes at the stars, a sight they had never beheld before due to always being indoors at night. The next morning, they return to the ruins of their home and decide against rebuilding in the same location. After gathering any salvageable supplies, they bury their loved ones and bid them a final farewell. Subsequently, the three teens and Rocco depart in the car. Optimistic about discovering a fresh abode, they set their sights on the farms located further down the valley.